In the early 20th century, ethnomusicologists traveled around the United States seeking to document what they considered to be American traditional music, recording examples of Native American tribal chants, African American fiddle
What is
tunes,
that you said
Southern
now,
revival
Bob?
hymns, minstrel shows, and more.
I was born not far from this place, up here south, west of here, about 5 miles.
Many of these song catchers were seeking to identify and collect examples of a uniquely American sound. But what these ethnographers often overlooked were the rich musical traditions of non-English speaking immigrant groups in the United States. Sidney Robertson Cowell headed the Northern California Folk Music Project from 1937 to 1940. She was the first person to record folk music in Northern California. She recorded Scottish sea shanties sung by fishermen in the San Francisco Bay, Spanish Californian songs from the missions, 49ers mining songs, and other examples of music rooted to the experience of this unique place.
They gave it him to steal. When the old bleaker devil, he ran across the field.
In contrast to her predecessors, Cal refused to narrowly limit her work to record only what could be considered American music, and broadened the definition to include music from California's most recent settlers, the immigrant groups from the eastern United States and abroad, who first arrived during the gold rush in the 1850s and continued to emigrate west through the 1920s. Cal approached her subjects with respect and a personal curiosity that enticed them to play for her. She promised that the recordings would keep their music alive for future generations.
Oh, Laurentina, ouvir de limão, quem não tem amores não tem coração.
This is one of a series of recordings of California folk music made by the Department of Music at the University of California in cooperation with the Archives of American Folk Song at the Library of Congress under Works Progress Administration Official Project number 665-08-330.
The project archive includes recordings of folk songs, photographic portraits of participants, scale drawings of their instruments, and music and lyrical notations of the songs. For the project, she collected 35 hours of audio recordings from 16 ethnic groups in English and 11 other languages. These groups included examples of Portuguese, Hebridean Island, Armenian, Basque, Croatian, Finnish, Hungarian, Icelandic, Italian, Norwegian, Russian, Scottish, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Spanish, and English folk songs. Well aware of the xenophobia of the time, Cowell was careful in her official descriptions of the project to avoid the use of the term foreigner, and her personal papers reflect not a fear of, but fascination with the people she encountered.
Bagpipes, or miesznice, which I shouldn't try to pronounce. Mr. Borrow is playing his bagpipes, which he made himself from a goat skin, in San Mateo, California, on May 7th, 1939.
She conducted interviews with participants in order to fill out a series of questionnaires to provide context for the recording. She also spent substantial time with her subjects to get to know them, to understand their backgrounds and where they learned their repertoire of songs. One such group was the Russian Molokan Church congregation located on Potrero Hill in San Francisco, still an active congregation today.
From Salyim, which is a town at the foot of Mount Ararat in what is now Soviet Armenia. They were banished from Russia and went south, first to the Don River Valley, and then finally clear across the Caucasus Mountains into Armenia.
She would often travel to the far corners of the state with her electric Presto field recorder and her dog, just for a chance to record a folk singer she heard about through her network of informants and colleagues. What she found were extremely rich and varied musical traditions hidden in plain sight and connected to not only the immigrants' home countries, but also the California regional landscapes where they settled, which often mirrored their homelands. For example, Cornish miners who settled in the Sierra foothills and Scottish sailors who worked along the San Francisco Bay. Cowell sought to create a prototype for similar projects across the United States and had plans to start recording Asian music in 1940, but the project abruptly ended that year when the WPA declined extension of the funding, just as the US was about to enter World War II. The timing of Cowell's project was unique. The available WPA funding and government support for these types of projects disappeared after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, leading to an increase in xenophobia in the United States, which is still evident today. Cowell's work reveals the intact but rapidly disappearing ethnic musical traditions of California's diverse population in the 1940s. Despite her attempts to revive the project in the 1950s and a few other recordings she did for the Library of Congress later in her life, the bulk of her contributions to the field of folk music was encapsulated in this short project. The California Folk Music Project offers irreplaceable evidence of the rich musical traditions of California. When we listen to the recordings today, we get a glimpse of the pre-World War II California cultural landscape and its people. The archive highlights the significant role of immigrants in defining California's cultural traditions and reveals what later came to be called the Great American Melting Pot of cultures, traditions, and shared experiences of immigrant groups in the United States.
Brynning gleameth, takk